What's up guys, welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh video. So in this video I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Upper Deck counterfeits from 2008, going over how to tell the difference between them and authentic copies, and also a little bit about the backstory as well. Now the full story behind these counterfeits is actually pretty long, and I probably won't be able to go through the whole thing in detail in this video. But just to give a quick idea of how these things came about, around the middle of 2008, a product called Duel King 2 was released in retail stores around North America, definitely in Toys R Us and possibly in some other stores as well. And although the packs inside these products were legitimate, people noticed that the promos on the front were a bit strange, both in terms of like what cards were coming as promos, because normally you couldn't get set cards as promotional cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! But also the fact that they had some funny differences, like the Eye of Anubis was silver instead of gold, even though they were first edition and things like that. So people immediately thought they might be counterfeit and reported them to Konami, who launched an investigation and quickly found that these were linked back to a company called Vintage Sports Cards. So they filed an injunction against them and quickly got that. But what emerged during that court process was that Vintage Sports Cards actually had evidence saying that these counterfeits came from Upper Deck in turn. And Upper Deck denied the allegations, but there was a long legal battle between Konami and Upper Deck about this, and eventually Konami won the legal battle both in Europe and North America, which meant that Upper Deck lost control of the TCG, and that's why we have the situation today where Upper Deck no longer has anything to do with Yu-Gi-Oh! And Konami is the sole distributor of all TCG products. So moving on to the actual cards that are involved in this run of counterfeits, Upper Deck produced a total of 9 different cards, and we actually have the print run numbers for each of these as a result of some of the information that was shared during the court hearings between Konami and Vintage Sports Cards. So between 50 and 60,000 of each counterfeit were produced, so they're not rare at all. And the cards are Flame Wingman and Aquaneo's Ultimate Rares, Dreadmaster Ultra Rare, Water Dragon Super Rare, and then 5 different rares from McDonald's Pack 2. I've got the Whitehorn Dragon and Electrum here, but they also produced Mudball Man, Mistbody, and the Flute of Summoning Karibo. So what separates these cards from other counterfeits is that they're much better quality. And the reason for that is that Upper Deck managed to steal some printing templates from the factory where the authentic Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards were being produced. And as a result, they're made with the exact same templates as the original cards. So the differences come in terms of the cardstock and the ink, and also the Eye of Anubis. So this is a fake Flame Wingman, and the most obvious way to tell is that the Eye of Anubis, even though it's a first edition card, which should have a gold Eye of Anubis, is silver. But if you look at the cardstock in more detail as well, you can see that it's got a very, very high gloss finish, but at the same time looks quite tacky, and on the back as well, it's got an almost plasticky feel, which is not what you get on a legitimate card. And if I just take this and compare it to an authentic Flame Wingman, this is a European print on the left here, which is actually the more similar of the two prints to the fake, because they both have quite a lot of detail on the foil, whereas the North American version has almost no detail on the foil at all, so that's an easy way to tell the difference as well. Now the Euro print also has a high gloss finish, but it's a much higher quality surface, whereas the counterfeit, despite being glossy, is kind of also quite grainy at the same time. And if I just show you the back of the Euro print card, you can see that that's more or less matte, whereas the back of the Flame Wingman is very glossy. So those are the main ways to tell the difference with Flame Wingman, and I'll just quickly show you the Aquaneos as well. What's kind of funny about the Aquaneos is that the foiling on the fake version, which you can see this one is by the Silver Eye of Anubis, is actually superior to any of the legitimate versions. So both the North American and the Euro print, which I got here, have a relatively flat foil pattern. The Euro has a little bit more pop, but to be honest, it still arguably looks less good than the fake. But aside from that, you can still see that the counterfeit copy has that high gloss finish that looks really cheap compared to the authentic one. And again, the difference in the Eye of Anubis color. And if you look up close, the text on the counterfeits was also produced a little bit kind of bolder than the authentic cards, which is another pretty easy way to tell the difference if you're just looking at a picture of them. So moving on to the other counterfeits, these aren't really talked about as much because they're obviously much lower value cards, and so in general collectors aren't as worried about being duped out of $5 or $10 compared to thousands for the Flame Wingman, for example. But these actually have an additional difference, all of the rest of the counterfeits, which make them even easier to tell apart. That difference is that if you look at the Eye of Anubis in the bottom right, you should be able to see that it's actually sideways for the rest of the counterfeits. So on the Flame Wingman and the Aquaneos, it's still the wrong color, but the Eye of Anubis is at least the right way around. Whereas somehow for the rest of them, they actually got it so wrong that the Eye of Anubis is also sideways. And the cardstock is a little bit different for the non-ultimate rares, but you can still see it's got a kind of very high gloss finish to it, whereas a legitimate version is more or less matte. And just to show you one more example of the hollows, here's the Water Dragon. Again, you can see the counterfeit has that much bolder text. It has the sideways silver Eye of Anubis, and it has the glossy cardstock, both on the front and on the back. And the final class of counterfeits is the run from McDonald's Pack 2. So again, these have the same printing style as the others with the bolder text and the silver sideways Eye of Anubis. And on top of that, these have terrible print quality control. So you get all sorts of crazy misprints with like up to 6 names being printed on the card, both on the front and on the back. You do actually get some misprints with the ultimate rares as well, with like upside down foil and stuff like that. Just all sorts of crazy stuff that you'd never get in the actual legitimate print run. And the reason for that is that these were being produced unofficially, so probably on lower quality printers, probably with much lower attention to quality control. And so you just have all sorts of crazy things happening, which could never happen normally. So that's pretty much the main point of this video out of the way now. So I really just wanted to point out that these are counterfeit cards, and although they're cool and they're kind of interesting pieces of history in their own right, you should not buy these as authentic cards. And in particular, I would not recommend buying any that are PSA graded, because PSA does unfortunately grade these as authentic, but they are not legitimate cards, and they don't come from the products that they say in the card code. So you really cannot consider something like this to be an actual Ultimate Rare Flame Wingman. It's more or less just a really good looking Orica. But there is one more thing I wanted to mention in this video, and that is about what Konami did as a response to these counterfeits being produced. So in 2009, after they had got the whole lawsuit out of the way and got control of the TCG, they actually planned to do a promotion almost a bit like the corrected artwork Dark Paladin promotion, where they would recall all of the counterfeit copies produced by Upper Deck and actually replace them with legitimate copies with a K added to the end of the card code to denote that that's what these were, rather than being from the original booster pack runs of these sets. Now, every single card for this run was printed as a rare, which means obviously for McDonald's pack, they're almost the same as the original cards, just without the limited edition. But for all of the set cards, they were actually originally hollows, and so these are the only non-hollow versions of them available, which is a pretty cool little bonus. Now, in terms of how these were distributed, it's not clear whether Konami actually ever went ahead and did that that promotion as they were planning to. I certainly haven't been able to find any evidence that they did. And so it's possible that these were just leaked from the factory at a later date because they never found a use for them and didn't want to throw them away. But either way, they are a cool piece of history and a nice way to kind of round out the whole story of the Upper Deck counterfeits. And that brings us to the end of this video. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. If you have any questions or suggestions for future videos like this that you'd like to see, just put them down in the comments below. And aside from that, this is Schloss signing out for now, and I hope you all have a great day.